Hello, I'm Wayne Hemingway of Hemingway Design. Welcome to today's event at NTU. I suppose I began by probably nurture, in the way that the house that I was brought up in was a creative household with my mum and my nan making their own clothes all the time, with my pop made all my toys, was always growing stuff, making things in the shed, never sitting still. Quite a political family, and I was encouraged to just do stuff and get off my backside, really. And the word design was never used in the household because I don't think it was a concept. What they did wasn't a concept of a career. They didn't think you could make a career out of it. It was just something it's just the way that they lived. It was thrifty, DIY, getting on with things. You didn't need shops really. You could just live that way, and so it became natural. And then I was always also my mum was and still is very cool in terms of there was always music around the house. So as soon as a Beatles record came out, or as soon as a Stones record came out, it was there. She was playing it on. I remember there was 2 record players in different rooms in a tiny little house. As I said, she made all her own clothes, but she, looking back at the pictures of her in the nightclubs in Morecambe, unbelievably trendy. The whole lot of her and her mates and everything. And so, my nan was out dancing every day in her dancing dresses on Morecambe Pier. So they encouraged me at a very early age to get into music. It wasn't kind of force-fed, but I remember my mum took me to see Slade and then The Sweet when I was 10 years old, and then I went to see David Bowie on my own when I was 12. And then there was no problem when I wanted to go to Wigan Casino at 13 years old and stay out overnight in a drug-filled environment, really. But it was never questioned. It was just like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. If you're young, you go out and dance, So that was a big part of it. I've not met a good designer who has decided to, that looks like a good career, I'll do it. I mean, it's something that's in you. It's something that you've got that interest in people, number one. I think anthropologists will make great designers. You've got to be interested in people, you've got to be interested in going out, you've got to be interested in getting out there and looking how human beings live. And I did that from just a very early age. And then obviously met Geraldine, who was from a very similar, creative background, making her own clothes, into clubs, buying records, watching bands, and we met on a dance floor, in a disco. She was there in her clothes she'd made herself. She'd left school at 15 with no qualifications, but what she wanted to do was earn enough money to buy more records, to make more clothes. The perfect thing really for a designer, I would have thought, because that's the thing that drove her. It was, consuming, a dream was always to have a house that she designed herself. She dreamt about that, she said, from when she was a teenager, eventually fulfilled that dream. And I think, my granddad, I remember him used to say it regularly to me. He said, "You're only here 70. Live it with a smile on your face." And there's certain things in life that give you more of a smile on your face, and that is having fun. And most things to do with having fun are, cultural, really. I mean, apart from sport, I did a lot of sport as well, and that was fun. So I kind of went down. Whether it was a utopian view at all, I didn't know if you understand the word utopian, but I wanted fun. And you only have to look at when you see research today that the lowest truancy figures in school are in the arts, design and music. And I was lucky enough to understand that, not understand that fact, but understand that made me happy, and just went for it. But for some people, I think the important thing is you do see some young people nowadays who are clearly not as obsessed with clothes, music, all of those things, and yet they say that they want to be fashion designers or designers, and you think, well, actually, if you prefer to go home and sit and watch X Factor or Strictly or something like that, you might think that's cultural, but it isn't. That was all. And again, I've not met a designer ever, good designer ever, who follows crass popular culture. There's always some. I've always been anti. Geraldine has always been anti. you know, you learn an awful lot through things going wrong, and I think that, you know, we started out in business by things going wrong. The positive thing was that with some mates we'd formed a band, but the band was costing money to run, and I spent our money that was earmarked for the rent on our flat, man Geraldine's flat, spent that on the band and left with no money, not enough money to pay the rent, and we had to get some money, and needs must, we emptied our clothes, my second hand and Geraldine's made stuff, onto Camden Market, on a new bit of Camden Market that was just starting, and that was that. And if we'd not had the gumption to do that, if we just thought, oh God, you know what we're going to do, you know, there's always ways to have a go at something you made. Luckily, that worked from day one, but along the way we've had loads of things, especially in the fashion industry, where you completely make massive errors with collections. You get carried away with something, you make mistakes in the manufacture, you choose the wrong fabrics, you make shoes that are unwearable, and you know, all of that kind of stuff you make. But unless you try, unless you've got to have more winners than losers. You've got to back more winners than losers, and that you get better at that through experience. But you know, you make a bit of money, you save a bit, but you invest X amount of it, and you should never be afraid of failure, because what's the worst thing that can, you know, it's not, none of this is, design isn't life or death. Fortunately, our bad times have never been that bad, because we never borrowed any money. So there's never been that worry of having this noose around your neck where the bank's going to foreclose, and we've never had to worry about that. So we've always been very prudent, and that comes again from our background, where we've made a bit of money, you know, and then decided we'll risk X amount of it. And as long as you've got that, you learn that, well, the risk is not going to ruin your life, and then you can live with it. I think it's quite difficult. A lot of people take risks that can actually completely flatten them. It's kind of common sense, is by the very nature of what it says, that everybody must have it. It's whether you're prepared to think just a little bit. I mean, it's pretty obvious that if you've got £10,000 and you've worked hard to achieve that, and then you think, well, this is costing 12,000, if it doesn't work, I've lost it all. Well, you risk 8,000 and keep a little bit. Both me and Geraldine are obsessive, and most of the creative people I know have got different levels of obsession. Probably the better designers are almost autistic, I would say, in their obsession, which, you know, certainly Geraldine is more than me. And we do see designers who come up with an idea which they totally believe in, and you see this with inventors as well, and they get their patents and all of that, and they become absolutely obsessed with it. They become obsessed with people copying it, they become obsessed with seeing it through to fruition. But you have to have those antennae, which again you get more with experience and with age, where you think enough's enough. But I always say to young designers, you know, you have to, ideas are 10 a penny. But if you've got a fertile mind, then coming up with ideas isn't difficult. The most difficult thing is getting those ideas to market, and if you push and push and push and it won't come to market, and there's blocks all the way, move on. And maybe you can come back to it in a few years, but move on, because you're forcing yourself into a corner, you're spending money, you're wasting time, you could be getting on with other things. So you've got to move fast, and you've got to think, right, we've done that, you know, we've designed bikes which have been successful for a few months, and you think, but actually it's not going anywhere, you know, and so you think, that's it, cut. You create brands and you think, we're not really getting there. You know, festivals that we do it one way, and we think, it's amazing what we've just pulled off, but it's too difficult. And you know, it's debilitating, so you cut and you go in another direction. Oh yeah, massively. I mean, you know, when you've got more than one person, when you've got somebody else who can be another voice of reason, and it's more than that. You know, we've always Red or Dead. When we had Red or Dead, it was a team of like-minded people, and we listened. You know, and when somebody said, "Come on, we're not getting anywhere with this," we'd discuss it. And the good thing is about, you know, mine and Jodie's relationship is that, you know, we both do question each other and question what we do, and talk about it. With something like this, where it doesn't feel most of the time it doesn't feel like work. It means that when you're at home as well, you can start like last night at 8 o'clock. You know, we had a relaxing weekend, but Jodie said, come and look at this, and she'd been designing something to do with vintage at New Year's Eve at the South Bank, and you know, it was no hassle really to spend 45 minutes bottoming something out before we came into work today.
Yeah.
It helps. We've always been very open with the team, and but also it's not just the team, it's with manufacturers and with customers and with licensees. We listen. You know, we've always stayed really close to our manufacturers and licensees, really close, because you know they're the eyes and ears to the ground and to the retailers. When we go and design for John Lewis, we don't just go and say this is what Hemingway Design have done, you know, take it all, which a lot of designers do. Take it or leave it. We'll say to them, well, you know, would you have done it? Would you have done it any different? Would your team have done it any differently? You know, does this go along with what you think will sell? And then if they say, if we don't agree with what they'll say, then we'll discuss it. But quite often it's a way of reaching real commerciality. And then the other thing as well is that we're very lucky with now is that we've got, you know, the new generation of Hemingways who are 26 and 25, the eldest two, who are working with us, and that they've been brought up in an design environment, and that's quite lucky. Having a family business helps, and it's always been a family business. My mum, when we did the first set up the first Red Dead factory in Blackburn, she set up the second Red Dead shop in Blackburn, and then she became our wages and accountant for years and years and years. And Geraldine's dad did deliveries. Geraldine's sisters used to work in the factory. And it can be a very lonely business, and I've seen too many designers who just, you know, they sit alone designing and they feel all the pressures are on them. You definitely need a network, and it doesn't have to be family. It's very handy if it's a family, and if you get on, that's probably been the biggest thing that we've got now and had back then and have got now. And Red Dead was a family. It was like a family. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be suppliers, it can be your customers, it can be your licensees. You know. Well, it's a combination. People find you if you're good. People find you, and you've got to then again have those antennae that can pick out the ones that work and the ones who are not that good. You know, potentially not that good. But you've got to research as well. You've got to, you know, nowadays it's reasonably simple to research potential partners. You know, start with the internet, and then you've got to talk to people who they work with, and it's very easy because in design industries, people show an interest in you and they get excited that you're a designer, and you've got to then kind of wheedle out those that are transient and those that are serious about it, and you do that by getting to know people as quick as you can, by research, by taking out references, by doing what's called due diligence. And you must never get excited about somebody fawning over what you do, because you know that happens all the time. But you often get the ones who fawn the most are often the ones who are causing the most trouble. And it's intuition as well. I mean, you've got to use that. And you've got to be a little bit questioning. Well, a lot. You know, as a designer, you're questioning. You've got to be questioning about people who you're going to work with as well, because you're only as good as the people who are going to get your ideas to market. And if you choose the wrong people to work with, then it can. Sometimes you don't realise, you don't know if it's your design or if it's the people. I think we always understand that the most important thing in what we do isn't necessarily the design. It's the stage after you've done the design, really, and then getting it sampled, getting it fine-tuned, getting the pricing right, getting the materials right, getting the delivery structure right into the stores, so that if it does sell, it gets repeated, and they can get their repeats quickly. All of that, because you can have fantastic design that falls flat on its face, and you can have slightly less fantastic design that works really, really well, and you're better off having slightly less fantastic design. the danger is as a designer that you want perfection, and sometimes that perfection leads to an obsession.
Yeah.
And you have to temper it. I mean, if you can sometimes you get both.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get absolutely amazing design, and where everything goes right.
Yeah.
And we've had that, with the housing scheme that we did.
Yeah.
You have it with the odd collection that you do. We've got it right now with the G-Plan Vintage Sofa collection. We've achieved perfection. Sales are amazing. Relationships are amazing.
Yeah.
Everything's perfect.
Yeah.
But most of the time you have to settle for less than that. You have to understand everybody's needs. The manufacturer has to make money. They have to have a life as well, and they haven't got to be kind of beaten over the head all the time by, some designers think that they're everything. They live in ivory towers, that they can treat people like shit. Everybody who we work with are equal to us.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Everybody involved in the process of getting our product to market is treated as exactly like us.
Yeah.
Because without them we can't do it. Well, I don't think many designers only think in one dimension. If you can design fashion, you probably could design the house that you wanted to live in. You might not be able to work out where the structural elements, the lintels and everything will go to make sure the damn thing stood up and how to make the roof trusses work, but you bring in a structural engineer to do that. You could probably work out the kind of bike you want to ride. You certainly can do the interiors of your house. When creative people walk down the street, they have a view of the people who are, they look at somebody's hairstyle, look at the boots they're wearing and how they got their hair and their makeup. But you also notice the shop window displays, and you also notice the cars. And when you get on the tube, you notice when there's a new tube carriage, and you notice how they've tried to get more space for people to stand up, and then you start looking, well, could they have got more in? I mean, it's everything. If you notice all of that, when you look at a website, you know which is a good-looking website, which isn't. When you're watching television, you know which is a well-produced. With a film, you know which films have been done with, with a creative, with a much more, which have been filmed better, more cinematic. You notice all of that. So why can't you? If you notice it, it means you can do it. We have that saying at Hemingway Design, or mission statement, whatever you want to call it, where it's about improving. Design is about improving things that matter in life.
Yeah. And
so, if you're going to be that way, where you're critical of things and you want things to improve, then you can do it with anything. When we design housing estates, people said to us, and the first one we did was massive, 760 homes, and it's been an enormous success. We'd lived in houses for 40 years. With minds like ours, if you've lived in a house, what more experience could you want than to actually have lived in houses, moved around? And obviously, there's no way we could have designed the houses without structural engineers, but that's all they were. It's like everything, there's an engineering side to design, and there's a production side, and then there's an aesthetic side, and there's a side about what does something do, which you can describe in words. I think it's grown. I mean, we wouldn't have had the knowledge to use words like that. The first words that we used for Red or Dead were, we wanted to be the world's first affordable designer label, and that was quite advanced for its time.
Yeah.
So we've always understood the value of knowing why you do things.
Yeah.
I think we've never kind of just designed for design's sake. We've known the affordability thing was very important to us because of our background. So that, for example, we've had, I don't know, 8 years success with Tops Tiles. Via our licensee selling to Tops Tiles. Well, because of our philosophy, we were able to go and work with them with no worries, and the public were able to accept it. Because we know about the Hemingways, they like designing. Yeah. But could you imagine Vivienne Westwood or Alexander McQueen or Paul Smith selling to Tops Tiles? There would have been no way. So we've understood the importance of having mission statements. We never really called them mission statements. But understanding what we are and why we do it, and who our market should be. Well, I think it's really important, but again, with that, it has to make money so it can keep going. But But the more socially minded businesses we can have, the better. But you can make money out of it. You know, you look at the best social enterprises that I know are often the social housing.
Yeah.
And that, you know, some of them make really good money, and you know, they're able to pay their staff reasonably well, and yet they are providing a service.
Yeah.
So it can work. Well, I think, you know, you've got to have ideas, and you've got to constantly be wanting to bring those ideas to fruition.
Yeah.
You've got to be capable of real hard work, because I don't know many people who are successful who don't work really hard and are a bit obsessive about it.
Yeah.
You know, so that whole thing about failure is not an option until you've gone through every single route.
Yeah.
That within reason until you realise, well, this is not a goer. So you've got to. I think what I think good entrepreneurs don't like is regrets about, I wish I had done this. I wish, you know. I think good entrepreneurs go for it. Then they know when to cut and say, right, that's not working.
Yeah.
Failed on that, move on to the next thing. From small things like our water butt, which did work, but then at B&Q got too many complaints from older people, wasn't it, Jared? They got loads of complaints from old people writing in. So we know why that didn't work, and which is a bit crazy because it was selling really, really well. But then you just have to laugh about it,
yeah.
Even though you've lost money on it because of the investment in all the moulds, and you move on. Another example is doing things like, you know, with our vintage festival. You know, some of the infrastructure that we built, this high street cost amazing, and everybody loved it, and you know, you won awards, but it just cost too much money, and you're thinking, and cost too much time and effort.
Yeah.
You just think, even though you've just created probably one of the best things that's ever been created in a build at a festival, you just got to think you've got to find another way to do it, because you know it just would just be vanity.
Yeah.
Well, you mature in that you've got a memory bank of things. You build up a memory bank of, and that's important, of being able to remember what you did well and what you didn't do well.
Yeah.
And you also learn how to deal with people better, staff. You also recognise how to spot people you'd work with better,
yeah.
and you learn to. You still make mistakes. You know, you still don't spot things in people, but you also probably learn how to move on. Well, massively. I mean, I remember once this fella saying to me, he wanted to know what Red or Dead stood for, and in the early days of Red or Dead, and I explained it came from the saying "better red than dead." You know, the Cold War that was going on,
yeah.
And the Americans being belligerent against the Russians, and young British people were saying, "Well, I'd rather be red than dead,"
yeah.
Which was saying they'd rather become under communist rule and go to war and have a third world war. And that was quite a strong stance, and a new stance that the youth was taking. And he said no, and he said no. What does it stand for? I said, well, I just told him it. And then he said, no. What's the philosophy behind it? And at that stage, I was quite young, and I remember him saying, well, what's your favourite cereal? And I said, well, first of all, I asked him why he was asking. He said, no, bear with me. And then he said, I said it was at the time it was Weetabix and cornflakes. But I always liked Weetabix and Coke. And then he said, well, why? I said, because they don't. You can choose how much sugar you want to put on.
Yeah.
And I've always done sport, and I know that every time if you have something sugary before you, especially me, if I have something sugary before I run, I get stitch and start feeling a bit sick. I've had lots of examples of that. So I said, and then he quickly jumped in and said, oh, you're a runner, are you? He said, which shoes do you wear? Which running shoes do you choose? And I said, well, usually Nike. And he said, why? And I thought back, and I said, well, the reason I like Nike is because they were formed by two marathon runners, two proper marathon runners. Two men came together who were at the time quite senior marathon runners in an American team or whatever, and then they named their company after the god of running, which is Nike. And he said, all right, so it's not for the swoosh and all the advertising and Shaquille or whatever he's called, that basketball player. And I said no. He said, right, so you choose your cereal not because it's got a chicken on the front of the box, because it serves a purpose, and you choose your running shoes. He said, tell me why people will choose red or red. And that's when we went away, I think, and said, right, what are we going to stand for? And that was, we're going to be the world's first affordable designer label and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that USP and that raison d'etre, I think, is really, really important. It stopped us just being a label and a designers and gave us a philosophy. Whatever we're doing, if we're going to design housing, we know damn well who it's aimed at.
Yeah.
If we're going to design wallpaper, we know damn well that it's the B&Q level.
Yeah.
And if we're going to design sofas, it's John Lewis rather than Conran store. And it means that you know how far you have to compromise, because you know the price you have to get to, because that's what you do. But it's the best thing we've ever had is understanding that. A lot of designers do just say that they design and they want the market to come to them, but we design for the market. Well, the main attribute they can have is they've got to enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think it's very hard to see anybody who's has success who's not really doesn't really enjoy it. I don't think the two, whether it's sport or anything, I don't think you can have real success and not enjoy what you're doing. But you have to be able to work really, really hard, because I don't know anybody. All the designers that we know seem to work long hours.
Yeah.
Seem to be a bit obsessive about it. I think it's just the very nature of it. Well, they're number one, they're interested and they're vocal, and they come to you with work and they show you stuff, and they even when they've had their work experience finished, they keep in touch and they show you what they're doing. You just see that spark in them.
Yeah.
You just see it, and you can see who has an affinity with what you do.
Yeah.
And normally they keep in touch. That's the main thing. If there's not a job for them straight away, the good ones keep in touch.
Yeah.
Most of them know the kind of companies they would like to work for. If they don't want to have a business themselves, they know that.
Yeah.
And it is possible to impress those companies, but not by just sending a CV. Have I ever read a CV? Maybe not.
No.
I want to see, but when somebody sends something and they say, right, really like the housing that you're doing, this is what this is the housing I like, and this is something I've come up with an idea of, or you should be doing X product at Hemingway Design, and this is how I would see that product done by Hemingway Design. That's what you want. You want generosity. You get some designers who they won't show you anything because they think they want you to sign a confidentiality contract or something. Well, they're not going to get very far. You don't want somebody who just sits there in a corner just drawing. You want somebody who's saying, well, I went out shopping this weekend and I took this picture, and we could do it like, you should be doing something like that, but do it this way, or I went out this weekend and I saw some Hemingway Design products and it wasn't displayed very, very well, but doing it in a nice way and saying, this is how I would do it like that. You want somebody who you think, bloody hell, they are going to add value.
Yeah.
But if you're worried about being ripped off, it means you've only got one idea. Of course people are going to copy, that's part of it. Unless you get your ideas out there and show them to people, you're not going to get anywhere, and the last thing you worry about is being copied. It just happens all the time. It happens.
Yeah.
But you've got to get that idea to market and do it better than the other people and get it out to market fast. But I think if there's, I like the idea of what some art and design schools are doing in terms of giving people space in a place where people can see them.
Yeah.
And that's not just about fashion, that's about everything. Until you're in front of people, because everything just about everything that you do in the creative industries has to be consumed by people, and unless you get in front of the consumer, whether it's with your telly idea, whatever. And that, even if they don't want their own business, it's still the same. You still need that same skill. You still want them to understand what the consumer. It's not our job. It's not our job to know what the consumer. It's the designer's job, as they're designing, to totally understand. Would a consumer buy this product? Or if you can't do it, you've got to be getting feedback regularly from the people who are, and accurate feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
But it gets harder, and it does get harder the busier you are. But certainly when you're in the formative stage, when you're just coming out of college, if you can get that experience.
Yeah.